be presenting the Sitecore CDP session 2, in which we will be covering all the REST APIs on Sitecore CDP, as well as we will look onto the uh, basic walkthroughs of the demo, how the REST APIs interact with each other to create the interactive sessions in CDP, as well as we will be giving you a business overview, like of which on which cases the CDP can be utilized in the entire landscape of this project. Yeah, so me along with Varun will be presenting this session. Mm. Yeah. So myself, Chirag, I have like around 10 years of experience working on Sitecore. I've worked on like various areas in Sitecore CDP and Sitecore Personalize, and my major expertise is in majorly in this area. And I've also worked on Content Hub and XM and XM Cloud. And yeah, all working as a full stack developer with extensive experience on all the front end technologies as well. And during my free time, I like to spend time with my dog.
Cool. Well, this is me. I like to say I was born in Sitecore 15 years back, and yeah, I've been working on various things on Sitecore. Of course, been lucky to be a five-time MVP, technology MVP in Sitecore. I am also a co-founder of the Sitecore User Group India, a host of a podcast called Sitecore Tech Talks. And when I'm not doing technology, I'm still doing technology because I'm a hobbyist IoT a device maker, as well as I like to spend time with my kids in my garden, as I'm a gardener. All right, let's get started with the topic. So today what we'll first do is we'll have a quick recap of the previous session, but that recap will not just be a recap. It of course will be connected with a few more detailing, a few more key concepts of the things that we saw from an introduction standpoint last time, right? And then we will move on to a quick demo as a part of the key features. And after that demo, um, Chirag and we will discuss a few of the business and technical use cases of how can CDP be useful to any business, or why a CDP should be implemented by any business. All right, so let's get started. Basically, we looked at guest, visitor, right? So basically a guest is somebody who interacts with a brand. As per terminology with Sitecore XPs, we had a contact, which is a guest here, and it has a potential to be more robust based on the properties that we initialize in that guest, and all the behavioral and transactional data of that user is residing in a guest profile. By behavioral and transaction data, what we mean is whatever interaction the user is having with your brand, whether viewing different pages, whether clicking different buttons, whether ordering something on your website, whether liking something, whether subscribing to something, all this data can be covered and put into your CDP so that you can then generate various segments which can then be utilized to do something for your business. Next is a visitor, of course. A guest who is not yet identified with any PII data is called a visitor. And when that visitor is identified with, with either an email ID or a phone number, or say a loyalty program number, any of that identity information, in that case, that particular user becomes a customer. And when you have multiple visitor accounts before being identified, but then when you identify yourself on one device and then log in with the same credentials on another device, those multiple visitor profiles get connected into a customer profile, and the one which was previously visitor and now becoming a customer, that becomes a retired profile. So we will look at that as well today as a part of the demo. So keep watching. But yes, this is the overall gist of it, and a little bit into data modeling of the guest. So as we mentioned, we can make guest more robust. We can make so because Sitecore has built an extensive data modeling and parameterizing various things as a part of guest. So every guest basically has different entities called orders and sessions. right? So every guest properties, you have default guest properties, something like email, first seen, last seen, language, this, that. But then there are other entities like orders and order lines. So any user who is ordering something on your website, eh, that is considered as a part of the order section in CDP, and each order, like each product that he or she is ordering, is a part of that order line. Similarly, a user might come to your website from multiple devices, or the same device he might come at multiple different times. That is called a session. And that also is an entity, and session might have different events. It could be a view page event. It could be an order event. It could be a user identified event or a guest identified event, right? Those events are something which are pre-built. We need to use them as a part of the APIs. We need to provide them properties so that those events are then available in our the CDP guest profile, and then those event data can then be utilized to identify the overall nature of our customers on the website. Last but not the least is a guest extension. Of course, there are properties which you can utilize and make your overall business a lot of gain. But then there are also some properties which are specific to your business. Plus, the second thing is with entities like orders and order line sessions and events, that data uh, keeps on getting refreshed, which means the old data keeps on getting out of the system, right? You cannot have like 5 years worth of guest data. You can only have some finite number of months of data for any customer. So in that case, what you want to do is you want to identify something and keep it permanently for that particular customer. And that is where you basically utilize extensions. So there are these properties which are business specific. You can define whatever you want to, and you can keep them permanent so that the users who are coming to your website can can get in. You have those properties initialized based on whatever is required, and you can utilize them for getting the needful done for your business. So as I said, usual guest properties are something like basic information of, the full name, the gender, the email, the phone numbers, some other identifiers, right? Maybe preferred language, first seen, last seen, so on and so forth. There are others as well, but just because I have initialized only these properties are currently visible. But hey, you know what? Data extensions. So if you see here, so Chirag and me, we are car enthusiasts, okay? And we love cars, like we love the Tata cars and the Mahindra cars, so we generally take examples based on those. This is not specific to any company doing it. It is because we are enthusiasts and we like those cars, we take these examples. And it is always good to connect something with the real world, right? So here, let's say we have taken an example. We are a car enthusiast for Mahindra, and a vehicle was liked by somebody. Somebody liked a vehicle, so we have some various properties like whether the customer has bought the vehicle or only done the test drive or nothing, right? Just inquired. So then if the vehicle is bought, the status is vehicle bought, which means that person is already a customer and is interacting, which means, let's say, how can this be utilized? If the vehicle is bought, they are looking for service, so why not start a service model with them, and how do we start? When did they buy the vehicle? If they have bought the vehicle right now, they are going to get the delivery in next 2 months. Why not ask them if they want any additional accessories, the cross sell. So this is how you can have the business properties as extensions, and add those data or add those information here, which then your business can utilize based on your processes, and your overall revenue can increase and stuff like that. So this is where we'll now move from the guest where all the data is stored in CDP to the API layer, using which you can store the data. And for that, Chirag will take us through these pointers.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Varun. So yeah, in CDP, like as Varun mentioned, we can store data in various formats as part of data extensions, as part of orders and order items, or third as a part of events and sessions, right? So we have currently three kind of ways to store this data. So one is the stream API. The stream API we will generally use when we are like integrating this SDK. So basically, Cyclo CDP provides an SDK, and when we want to integrate this SDK to our website, right? So in that case, Stream API will be called internally whenever you integrate the SDK. So that will be internally calling the Stream API. So that's one of the ways. So whenever like you have the basically that library or the SDK is available in various frameworks like JavaScript or React or Next.js. So basically, it's available in various front-end languages. So you can integrate any of the SDK according to your front-end language, which your website is based on. And then once you are calling those functions from your SDK library, that will automatically trigger the Stream API. Then other way is a REST API. So if you want, like if your application is a like a mobile application, right? Or like you cannot integrate a front end frameworks like or SDK, which is provided by them. So you can like other ways you can call the Postman APIs. So these are the REST APIs. So you can just in your mobile application you can just call those REST API. There are some endpoints and URLs for that, so you can just leverage those APIs and just call them. So basically, REST APIs will do the same thing as a Stream APIs will do, but the advantage of a REST API is like you don't need to have the SDK initialized in your framework, right? So all those limitations can be prevented, and this is mostly used in case of like when you're using the mobile app where you don't have flexibility to integrate with the SDKs and all other things, right? And the last is the batch API. So batch API we generally use like when we want to ingest a large amount of data. So for example, like you are consider like your use case, you are like migrating from you are integrating with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, right? And they have like number of users in their systems, right? Like around lakhs of users or 10 millions or something like that. And you would like to ingest those data in your Sitecore CDP, right? So that you cannot ingest using the Stream API or the REST API. So those APIs do not provide those flexibility to ingest the data in millions of amounts. So batch API can be used in that scenarios where you would like to ingest the data from other system, which can be any other external system to Sitecore CDP. So that data will be ingested in Sitecore CDP to the batch API, and batch API has a complete requirements. So basically, we need to make sure like the data format should be basically it's like a JSON file. And that JSON file limitations are like 50 MB limitation is at one time only 50 MB file size can be uploaded, right? And so that we need to make sure. But yeah, like when we are ingesting the large amount of data, so we can consider the case of batch API. So basically, it's used for the data ingestion part. Yeah. Yeah. So now, like when I talked about the APIs, right? So generally, like each API have a base URL, right? So this whenever you are integrating with the Sitecore CDP, so this is the platform which is API engage hyphen us.sitecloud.io. So this is a base URL for all the APIs. And this will like US or will vary according to the CDP tenant you have, right? So this will be like if you have in America region, you will have US. If you are in APAC region, you will have AP. So this US and this basically that will vary according to your CDP tenant. So we need to make sure like according to your tenant, you change your base URL. So only the region will vary. Apart from that, everything would be same. Yeah.
So Chirag,
And yeah.
I have a question here. You say the URL will vary based on the tenant, but CDP is SaaS. So
Yeah.
how would I know that in which region my CDP is?
Yeah, so basically when you go to your portal.sitecode cloud, right? So there you will come to know like what your CDP tenant is. So when I will be giving the demo, so I will be showing like how you will come to know like which tenant your CDP lies on, so that you can decide the base URL accordingly.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, and then generally, like most of the APIs are requiring the bearer token authentication, right? Because we are ingesting the data, right? And we do not want any other third party to directly ingest data into your Sitecore CDP without any authentication, right? So in that case, we have a bearer token based authentication. So whenever you are ingesting the data in Sitecore CDP, so you need to provide the bearer token. Bearer token can be generated using the combination of client key and API token, which I will show you like how we can generate that. And but when you are fetching the data, Some of the APIs allows you to fetch the data without the beta token. The fetching is allowed, but whenever you are ingesting the data, so we need to make sure the beta token is provided on those kind of APIs. Yeah. Yeah. So in this demo, like we will look on to like how we will be creating the guest or updating the guest or like creating the data extensions which were showed like the guest properties and how we'll be updating those data extensions. So basically we can create the data extensions and now there may be scenarios like we want to update those data extension properties, right? And like suppose we inserted five properties in data extension. Now we want to insert one more property to that data extension, or we want to remove some of the properties, right? So we can use the like this update data extension is available in the new API version. It was not available earlier. So now with the new version, update data extension is also possible. So we will be looking like how we can update to these data extensions. And the most important part, we'll be looking like how the guest or the customers are created and how the customer becomes retired. So this is how like we'll look onto the entire journey because we wanted to like give you the gist of complete journey, how the customer turns into how the guest turns into a customer and how like whenever like guest integrates from multiple because if your user has integrated from coming from website or if the website is if your user is coming from mobile app, right? How the data gets merged and how the other profile gets retired. So we'll be looking onto that part as well. Yeah, sure. So I can share my screen.
Chirag, we are seeing a screen with your PPT. I think you want to share the Postman,
Yeah,
right?
1 second.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So whenever it comes to your Sitecore portal, yeah, so you will be seeing like your CDP TNet. So majorly like when you're working with Sitecore CDP and Sitecore Personalize, you will be getting the Sitecore CDP prod and non-prod TNet, right? So this is the one of the sandbox TNet which we are using for this example for the demo. But yeah, like when you are working with any client, so you will be getting the majorly four uh, boxes you will get. One is a CDP prod and one is the CDP non-prod. Another is the personalized on-prod and the personalized prod. So those four are available out of the box. So if you click on to this CDP sandbox UX, yeah, here like from here you can decide the region. So this will basically help you to distinguish like which region your CDP is based on. So accordingly, your base URL should vary according to this. So if you are in APAC region, it should be a app hyphen CDP hyphen AP. So you can accordingly change the base URL according to that. Yeah. So this is how the CDP will look like. And here, like as mentioned in the earlier sessions, there will be all the guests, which will be uh, customer and then the traveler and the visitor. So all the anonymous users will come as a visitor. And then when the guest becomes identified, it will turn into a customer. Right. So we'll first look out to this, like how a visitor can be created in Psycho CDP, and then how a visitor will become a customer through the REST APIs. And then we'll be looking on to the retired use case. Yeah. So here, like first part is like whenever you're working with the starting with any Sitecore CDP integration, you will need to make sure you create a point of sale. Yeah. So this point of sale, like you can like just click on create and then create a point of sale. So this will be required. So whenever like each of your APIs require a point of sale, right? So you need to make sure like you enter all those details and you can configure the timeout. So this timeout is like basically similar to the timeout in the XP world whenever the session gets timeout in 20 minutes. So same here, it will get timeout in like whatever time you provide. So basically, whenever your user becomes interactive, user logs into your website, so that time the session gets started, and then automatically the session will get closed within the interval you provide in the timeout in this case. So you can configure your point of sale here, and this point of sale will be need to be provided whenever you are triggering any APIs as a payload. Yeah. So the first point you need to make sure, like whenever you are starting with CDP integration, you create a point of sale. And then the second point is like you go to the API access. And these are the like as I mentioned, right? Most of the APIs require the bearer token authentication. So this is the username and this is the password. Yeah. So this is like this will be like as provided as a bearer token whenever like you are integrating with your APIs. So these 2 points are important whenever you are starting with the integration. And then a third point is like you need to make sure like you create an identity rule. So the most important part is like how your CDP will know like what is the identity in your system, right? So you can configure up to 5 identity rules in your CDP. So here like one of the rules which we have configured is email. So whenever like we configure the identity provider as email, so that case will be identified as a user identification. And then the secondly, like most of the cases, like when you're integrating with Salesforce Marketing Cloud or any other parties, they have their own unique number, right? So in that case, we can provide their like unique number according to their like SFMC number or whatever loyalty ID. So whenever like you're integrating with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, so you need to make your interactions with the customers, like what will be the unique ID, so that you can create those identity rules in your system. So this should be the uh, first point whenever like you are talking with businesses. We need to make sure like identity rules are created. It should not be like at your middle of your project we are asking this questions, because this is the foundation of your CDP. So accordingly, you need to make sure like this identity rules are set up at the earlier journey of your project. So now like I will start with the like how will be anonymous user gets inserted into Sitecore CDP. Yeah. So one of the first APIs which will be this one, which will be creating a anonymous session. So this is like this is will be requiring your client key. So here is when I went to this. Yeah. So you need to make sure like this client key is provided so that it gets to know like where we need to create the anonymous user in Sitecore CDP. So this is the first endpoint which we need to call, which will take your client key, and this will when you call this. So let me just click on send. Yeah. So this will give you a reference ID. Will be a browser ID. You can see like a browser ID is equivalent to a session ID in the XP world. So this will be all your sessions will now be identified. All your basically that particular session of the user will be identified using this ref ID. So if I just copy this ID and go to Cycle CDP, here I can search with that box saver ID and whatever like ID I just created. So here you can just see like this was created just a minute ago, this user. Yeah. And this will also give you the customer reference ID. So this is a reference ID of the customer. Yep. So now you can see your initial when you created your uh, user using this, it's just a visitor. As you can see here, it's just a visitor and just simple properties. Nothing is there. Only the uh, orders and properties are nothing. Okay. And we have just basically this it just tells like anonymous users have come to your website and we have identified it using this particular session. So we have just started the session for that user, right? And now suppose your user comes to your website. I know like I've started a session now, like I wanted to say like he wanted to track some of the events, like they've closed the alert model or they clicked on somewhere, right? So what I can do, I can take the reference of this box saver ID, same here, some box saver ID here, and I can fire any event, right? So if I just fire this event with this box ever ID, okay. So we need to make sure like whatever type we need to fire that event. and the channel. So basically, the channel can be like if your user is coming from website, the channel would be web, and if the user is coming from mobile apps, you can vary that channel. And then the client key, as I already told, you need to gather it from there, the API page and the point of state. So these 5 parameters are the required parameters whenever you are sending an event for the user. And if you want to send some additional information, like for example, like if you want to tell which alert was closed, right? Because there are multiple alert models in your website, and we wanted to know like which alert has been basically closed by that user. So you can send it as a part of ext variable, right? So if I now trigger this event with this browser ID, so we need to make sure like uh, the event against which the user needs to be tied up. We provide the browser ID. So we don't need to provide the, so basically there are confusion sometimes. We are providing the customer reference ID here to fire this alert dismiss event. No, we don't need to fire the with the customer reference ID. We just need to fire with the browser ID, all those events, which is coming from the ref ID. Yeah. So now you can see like that the event gets fired. So if I just go to this page, which was just in event viewer, I'll just refresh this. Yeah, here you can see like now, because I just fired the alert event for this user, so the alert dismiss event gets triggered, right? So similarly, like what all the events you will be firing for this user, anonymous user, those will be also be tracked. It's not only only the for the customer, those events it will be tracking. So you can track the events for the anonymous visitor as well. So that will be coming in your event view dashboard. So if you just click on this. So here you can see like the event sent was alert dismissed, and along with the ext which I sent is update PCP. Basically, it's a kind of ID of the alert which you can send, right? So that you know like which alerts are closed by the user or which alerts are dismissed by the user. Yeah. So this is like now we know like the user has landed to a website and they are doing some kind of interactions in your website. And now suppose they click on the login button on your website, right? They just they click on login using their email ID and then password, and we want to track that now because we want to know we as a user we as a admin we know like this user email ID was a identifier in our system, right? So now currently this user is a visitor. Now whenever they're on the website the user clicks onto login button, we can fire the identity event. So for that, we can go to the identity user event. Mm. Yeah. Again, here like the type. So the type is important. So we need to make sure the type is identity. And again, the box saver ID should be the same as what we gather in step one.
Hey, let's use an email ID of our first
Yeah.
session attendee today, Meet Pandit. He came first, so let's create an ID in his name to honor
Sure.
him.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so the first, like we need to make sure like we are sending the type as identity and the browser ID is like the browser ID gathered in step one, and the channel can be web, and then same other parameters would remain same as it is. And then the additional parameter which will be added is the identifiers. So if you remember, like when I showed this page, I have configured an identity provider as an email, right? So same like whenever you're configuring your identifier, so here you need to make sure the provider you provide the same as what you have configured here, and in the value in the ID you need to provide the value for that email ID which the user is logged in. Sorry, one can you repeat what's the username?
Meet, can you? I think it's mpandit at horizontal.com, right? Let's say mpandit at horizontal.
Yeah. So this using this way, like we are telling like this browser ID is tied to this particular user, which is mpandit@horizontal.com. So initially, like whenever we created the browser ID, we were just a visitor. But now we are telling using this particular event that this browser ID is tied to this particular user, which is identified with mpandit@horizontal.com. So when I just fire this event, Now if I refresh this page, you can see the same profile, right? It was just a visitor just before ago. Now it has turned into a customer. Yeah. And moreover, like whatever like identity event which I just sent it here, it got added to this queue only. So if I just click on this as well, and if you note the session ID is same because the session is active for 20 minutes. So the session will be remaining same. All these events will be coming as a child item or the child item for this session. Yeah. So same here, like if you want to view the JSON for this particular event, you can just click on this debug icon. And here you can see like you have the identifier which you are provided. Yep. So this way, like you can make sure like you're making sure like your anonymous user has now turned into a customer, right? And again, like if you have multiple identifiers on your system, so you can make sure like you are providing like comma separated those values like this, and you can make sure like if you have some loyalty ID, then you can enter the royalty ID, like whatever like ID is 10099, and you can provide the identifiers according to that. So like there might be some questions like if you're providing multiple identities, how that resolution will gonna be working, right? Because how that CDP will know like whether to identify the user with this or whether to identify users with this, right? So there's a like resolving a user like how the CDP resolves those scenarios. We will discuss this later. But yeah, like first I wanted to give you a walkthrough of all the scenarios which can be possible. Then we will cover the scenarios if we are providing the multiple identities in Sitecore CDP. Now, like we have identified this user. Now again, like if I just fire this alert dismiss event or like uh, alert, or I just make it like alert start or something like that. Now, if I again tie this event to this same user, if I refresh this. Yeah. So you will see like using the same browser ID. We are not using the email ID or any other kind of customer references to track the events against that user. It's just with that browser ID, all the sessions are getting in queue or captured for that particular user with the same user ID. Now this was a scenario like for like when you're this is the normal scenario like where the user comes into your website and you just tracked it and you extended the identity event and all the events got captured in your scenario. But now suppose the case is like the same user, right? It's like coming from the mobile app, right? How the data will get merged and how the other profile gets retired. Now we will look into that scenario as well. Okay. Yeah. So now like if the user comes to the mobile app, right? So we can just create because user is coming to the mobile app, we will need to create another anonymous user session for that. So when we fire this event, yeah. So now here you see like this is the anonymous user session. So this is not tied to any session. So if I go to this CDP now, yeah, so this is again like a new user which came to your or basically came to your mobile app, right? And now the same this browser ID gets tied to your identify user, right? Or let's say like I fire some kind of let dismiss event for this user as well, right? So if I just go to this, so currently these two are separate profiles till now, right? Now we will see like how this gonna be merged uh, using the identity resolution. Yeah, currently, like you can see, like this have one event, which is alert start, and this have three events till now, right? Now, like this user now logs in into into your mobile app, right? So what I do is like again like identify this user, right? So again, like let me change the like or I can keep the channel as web only right now, and all the things as same because now I am what I'm saying is like with the same different browser ID, the same user has come to your website, right? So now if I click on this end, so now if I refresh this, you see this profile has become retired. So why this has become retired? Because we already had this guest in our CDP, which was identified with this username. And if I click on this event, which was there, one event was there, right? If I click on refresh now, so you see alert start event. Basically, that data from this particular journey got merged into this original record, and the other record become retired. Yeah. So this is how the unification of because CDP is like all about data unification, right? So whenever like your guest gets identified from your other platform, right? So it's all this data from the other area gets retired and it gets merged into the original ID, which is this. This one. So similarly, like if your guest is coming from your web app or if it's coming from other mobile application, you just create an anonymous user ID and then you identify that. At the moment you identify that user, all its data will gets moved from that new like that profile to the existing profile. So this way will give you the unified data persistence of that particular record. So yeah, so basically in this scenario, we covered all the use cases where like user comes into a visitor and then how it becomes into a customer and then how the journey becomes retired. I hope that that is clear now. Now moving on to the next part. Yeah. So if suppose like there might be scenarios like we want to search for the users in your existing system, right? So we have the other APIs to find the guest as well. So in that case, you can just configure the endpoint will be remaining the same, and the provider like because as I provided the identifier provider as email and the identifier ID as in my case it need to be like the email ID which I just provided. Yeah. So here you can see I got the record of that particular email which have the 454F04B1, right? This is the same record which is this one. So this way, like if you want to retrieve the guest from Sitecore CDP, you want to get that particular guest reference ID. They basically when you're working on Sitecore personalized, this reference ID is required in many of those major scenarios. You want to know like what is the exact reference ID for the guest in which they are stored in, right? So this can be leveraged using the find guest API. So here you just need to configure the email and then your ID. So in case like if your provider is loyalty ID, so it will work with that also. It's not only with that email this is working right now. So if your identity provider is another like Salesforce ID or loyalty ID, it will work with that as well and your whatever your ID is. So it will retrieve that particular guest which is satisfying that scenario. Yeah, now moving on to the data extensions. So as I already Varun told as I already told, data extensions are one of the ways to store the data inside Core CDP, right? So data extensions are like a form of a key value pairs or a dictionary you can imagine, right? So here it will be like this, I want to store the basically the any kind of properties you can imagine like loyalty points I want to store against this user, and I want to store all these other points as a key value pair in Sitecore CDP, right? So this can be stored in Sitecore CDP as a part of a data extensions, right? So if I go to this endpoint, here you will need to provide the guest reference ID. That's why I don't like this reference ID is very important when we are working with some other APIs. So in that case, you need to provide the guest reference ID. So this kind of APIs create extensions and update extensions and all other things will not work with your browser ID. So these are like very secured APIs, and this API also requires the basic authentication. Okay. So this basic like I will just cover on to like what all these values are. So, if you want to store this key value pairs in Sitecore CDP, you can just leverage this platform, this a endpoint. And here the important part is like you cannot store like infinite amount. So it's not like you can just like repeat this like you can store like 1,000 values in this or 1,000 key value pairs. So these are limited to store 100 key value pairs per data extension. So generally like each data extension, so basically we have 6 data extension groups inside CDP, and each data extension can store up to 100 values. Okay, so we need to make sure like when we are designing the data architecture inside CDP, we are storing only the relevant properties which will be like utilizing. It's not like your sales or marketing cloud or any other party have like thousands of tables or thousands of tables and thousands of columns in that, and we are considering storing all of them as part of data extensions, right? So it's not we should store all these values. So we need to like basically narrow down to the requirement where we want to just store the like we need, because this is a limitation, we just can store up to, because we have 6 data extensions and each data extension can store up to 100 properties, right? So we need to make sure like up to 600 properties only can be stored in Sitecore CDP. So when we are interacting with customers like sales or marketing or any other, so if they provide us a big sheet like store all these values, so we need to narrow down it to up to 600 properties to store in Sitecore CDP. Yeah. So now if I just create this data extension, let's say like if I go to this, so as I mentioned, like this API records a guest reference ID for creating the data extensions. Yeah, and the authentication, as I told, like it will be requiring a basic authentication. So this basic authentication, I just obtained it from the uh, this client key and the API key. So these are the same. This is the username and this will be the password. Yeah. And now if I click onto this end, yeah, so this data extension was just created. And if I just refresh this, so here you can see like initially like we didn't had this data extension group, right? So now whatever like data extension groups we create here, right? Those will be added in this part of if in your properties tab, which I just showed earlier, and this will be coming like this. So whatever like all properties which I just provided here in the loyalty tire and all those other properties will be just be stored as, and you can retrieve it from here. So this properties can be like this are the custom properties you can say, which can be tied up to the customers, and these properties are persistent. So these will not be like they say they will vanish after some period of time. So they have like persistent storage in their Amazon SQL. So basically, Cypress CDP use Amazon SQL for storage, and this data remains persistent. Mm. Yeah, so quickly, this was another part in which like I just created the data extensions. Now, now my scenario is like I remember like in future like I just added 4 properties and I want to add one more property to this, right? So what I can do is I can use the same endpoint which I just had it this way, and I can use the patch method in this scenario, and I can just paste this URL here, and I can just provide the additional property which I want to store, right? So whenever like you are using this uh, patch endpoint, we need to make sure like we are using v2.1. So this was like, as I earlier told, this is a new endpoint which is available, because earlier all the APIs which you saw uh, are based on V2, right? But this update extensions was just newly introduced. So we need to use a V2.1 for patching this amount additional properties. Yeah. So here you can see my other properties are also there. In addition to the new properties, if which I was inserted. So if I just refresh it now. Yeah. So you can see like the other property which I just patched it is also available, and the other properties which was already there has not been lost or has not been vanished, right? So this is the advantage of this using this patch API, which was just newly introduced. You can add custom properties on the fly, like according to your use cases. So you can leverage those kind of API for that. And if you want to retrieve like what's the exact value in your data extension, so you can just copy the reference ID of your guest, and whatever extension you want to retrieve, you can just click on send. So this will give you all the values which are there in your uh, in your in your data extensions, right? So there might be scenarios you want to update those values in your, suppose your account amount has been increased from 200 to 400, right? And you don't we want to add the 200 plus 400, make it want to make 600, right? So you want to retrieve the earlier value, so you can just use this endpoint to fetch the data extensions and update that, and then send it again for the update patch. Yeah, so this is how the whole scenario will look like when you are working in Sitecore CDP. Uh, so you need to create the data extensions, and this data extensions, as I already told, we need to make sure like we are, as I told, like this ext has like six groups: ext1, 2, and till 5, and each group have the 100 properties, right? So we need to make sure like we are narrowing down our data architecture to this 600 properties while storing in CDP. And if you want to leverage other endpoints, so like if I just yeah. So here you can see like one other group got created, which was loyalty tier level 3. So same like you can create 6 groups, right? Till ext6, you need to change the name here till ext5 is possible, right? And each group can have 100 properties. So this way, like you will have 6 tabs in your data properties in your properties tab, and you can store your data inside for CDP. Yeah. Yeah, so this was like as a part of demo, which we just want to demonstrate like how we can store these data extensions, how the guest journeys resides, and then I think like we can cover the business use cases considering the time left.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chirag. I'll get back to the deck. All right. So, of course, we saw the various ways in which we can create a guest, update a guest, identify a guest, view the guest, create data extension, update data extensions, the various ways in which guests are managed from a visitor to a customer to a retired, all those things, right? So, pretty easy. Right, when we know the API layer now, I mean, we were talking of the concept till now, but we actually saw it in place in in action, how it works with all these APIs. And think about it. These APIs, it's a simple API layer which you integrate like any other API layer for that matter into your website, and these things start working as plug and play in any system. But where do we integrate these APIs and why do we integrate these APIs? I think these are very important things to understand, and this is where Chirag and I, we will be now discussing in a way that I'll be wearing my business hat. So you can consider it virtually. I'm wearing a business hat versus Chirag wearing a technical consultant hat. And let's take a few of these use cases. All right. So as a businessman, what I want to do is I want to understand my customer needs, because that is how I can serve my customer better. I can, you know, scale up my business. So Chirag, how can I utilize CDP to know my customer needs?
Yeah, exactly. So there are like most of the scenarios like we are unsure like uh, in what scenarios we can leverage Cycle CDP to give advantages to businesses, right? So basically, like whenever like you consider a case of unified, as I mentioned, right? Unified data platforms. The CDP is a unified data platform, right? So you can have a one view of your 360 journey, right? Of your holistic journey of your guest at a single point, right? So that's the major advantage which we see like when we come into Sitecore CDP, right? And this because this, as I told, this merges the data from all other parties, like if you're coming from web, mobile app, right, or other any other third party channel. So all the data gets integrated and merged into a unified record, and that's how we can use the same record to personalize the user journey in mobile. Suppose like I want to show that in desktop I want to show a banner component, and in mobile I want to show some other component. So I can use the same unified data platform or the unified data record inside CDP to personalize that journey for the same user in mobile versus coming from a web application.
Cool. So which means because I am able to integrate it with any type of application, and all the interactions and events and everything is coming to one place, I think I can know my customer needs well.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
sure. I want to increase more engagement with my leads, which are my potential customers. Now, at present, I do not know who my potential customers are, but then I really want to increase more interactions, more engagement, so that they can feel that I really care for them, and eventually they can buy my products. So how can I do that with CDP?
Yeah, so definitely like increasing your revenue because Sitecore CDP, as I saw, like capture all the events in your journey, right? So you can have your like A/B testing or any other kind of testing or like multivariate testing, which we used to do in Sitecore XP world, right? To identify like the more engagement is towards which kind of interaction or which kind of pages the users are visiting more, right? So so we can cover like in the later sessions, we will show like how the dashboards looks like. So when it comes
Hmm.
to the events, like page events, you want to understand like which pages or which kind of like discount offers they are providing. Are they viable to clients or also not? Because are they clicking it, right? Or are they relevant to them or not? So we can understand from the complete dashboard journey which the Sitecore CDP builds when when it's building a user journey or when it's tracking all this dashboard, all the records, right? So we'll try to map like how these events can be in fact used for creating an engagement, right? So we will be looking out to the next sessions how this dashboard reports are created, how the marketing team can understand whether this whatever like they have created a discount offer or whether any alert is it a value to a customer or not.
Sure. And last is I want to increase my revenue. So I believe with CDP, because I can get to know my customer better, I can have more cross selling to them using CDP, understanding the patterns,
Exactly.
and maybe I can also engage well with them. So eventually my revenue might increase.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can like
Okay,
cross-sell you different kind of products, right? As I mentioned, right? So you can store like multiple orders, multiple order line items. So you can have a different kind of data stored inside your CDP. You can have cross interaction from various channels and store as a unified platform, and you can maximize the potential benefit from that.
sure.
Yeah.
Let's look at the technical cases in that case.
Sure. So yeah, so when it comes to the technical part, like how we will be using Psycho CDP, right? So the major applications which like we have come across till now is like we are integrating with Salesforce Marketing Cloud or we are integrating with the other ERP systems, right? So what we are doing is like basically they have their data hosted, data of their like millions of customers residing in their Salesforce Marketing Cloud, right? And they want to create a push to Sitecore CDP, right? So what we are doing is like we are creating a middleware in our application to interact with their Salesforce Marketing Cloud and ingest that data through batch APIs, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, that we are ingesting the data using the batch APIs in Sitecore CDP. So this way, like we as a Sitecore CDP know what kind of guest resides in their system. So when the user lands to their website, right? So because we are responsible for personalizing the user journey. So if their data is stored in Salesforce Marketing Cloud, we cannot go to each time hit SFMC and get their data, right? Because that would be a network cost associated with it. So what we are doing is like we are storing that data as an initial setup. So when we are starting the personalization journey, we are storing all that data extensions or all their tabular properties which they have in our data extensions, and also their along with the identity rules which we set. And then when the user comes onto their website, we are identifying using that particular identity, which I just showed you, and we are personalizing the user journey. So the most of the scenarios we start from integrating that data from SFMC or any other ERP system to Sitecore CDP, and then personalizing the user journey according to the stream APIs or the REST APIs which we can leverage.
Perfect. And when we are consolidating all this data, only the required in, for example, I'm consolidating data from a CRM to my CDP environment. That is where my guest extension properties come into picture, the way we saw. So yes, these are the details which we'll be definitely looking into in next sessions. Well, if you're liking these sessions, or if you have any future questions around CDP in the sessions that are already covered, or in as questions, and you want to ask separately, feel free to ask this particular team. We are trying to get these sessions as better from a content perspective as possible, and hope it helps all of you. So thank you for your time, for being here. I know we are just a minute over, so in case if you do not have any questions, we all can uh, take it forward later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.